Hope that you are having a good day so far. All right, so today we will be doing our grade 2 English lesson on action verbs. Right, so we'll be doing our grade 2 English lesson on action verbs. And before we start with our lesson, we are going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we are going to select the subject of language arts. And we're going to choose grade 2. All right, so once we've chosen grade 2, and then we're going to scroll down to the chapters up until we get to the chapter of action verbs. All right, so when we are by the chapter of action verbs, right? So we're doing our chapter action verbs. Our subject is English, which is also language arts, grade 2. And our lessons that we will be focusing on is to use the action verbs and also to identify the action verbs. So that is going to be our focus lessons under our chapter of action verbs. And before we even start with what an action verb is, remember a verb is basically the doing word, right? The doing word, it is action that is taking place. And that is a verb. All right. So if a verb is a doing word, right, it is action that is taking place. And then an action verb, it's an action verb, right? It tells us about what a noun does. So an action verb, it tells you what a noun does. So the noun can either be a person, can be a place, can be an animal, can be a thing, right? So that is the noun. So an action verb, it basically tells us what a noun does. And a few examples, right, of some action verbs. So a few example of action verbs is run, brush, skip, eat, read, and kick. That is but a few examples of action verbs. Right? And remember, an action verb, it tells us what a noun does, right? So if we write that in a sentence, and then we can maybe say, um, we smile. So we can say, we smile, right? So smile tells us what the noun does. So this is our noun. So what do? We being a noun, we smile. And smile is an action. It's something that you're doing. You're smiling. right? Or we can say the kids laugh at the clown, right? So the noun, it's kids, or we can maybe say the kids. So kids, it's the noun, right? That is the noun. So if you ask yourself, what is the noun doing? They laugh. So laugh is our action verb. So this is but a few two examples, right, of action verbs where a noun, where it tells us what the noun does. So we can identify the noun within the sentence as well as the action verb, the doing word within that sentence. All right. During the, we are first going to a+students.ca, and then we are going to use our very same examples um, to make a few sentences. So in the meantime, you can already think of a few sentences of run, brush, skip, eat, read, or kick. Remember, there needs to be a noun because an action verb, it needs to tell us what the noun does. But for now, we are going to a+students.ca, and that is where we are going to be doing our tutorial lesson. So we're going to a+students.ca. And we said our chapter is action verbs. And the first lesson that we are going to go into is to use action verbs. All right. So we said that an action verb, it tells us what a noun does, right? And the noun being either a person, an animal, a thing, or a place, for example, right? So what is it doing? Or person and animal, what, or the thing, what are they doing? And an example of an action verb is, or sentence is, she ate an apple. So what does she do? Because she being our noun, what does she do? She ate an apple. So ate being our action verb that tells us what the noun she does. We smile. So what do? We being the noun, right? We smile, and smile being our action verb. It's the action that shows us what the noun does, which is we. All right. So once again, an action verb, it tells you what a noun does. And remember, the noun can either be a person, a thing, an animal, right? So it basically needs to tell us what that person does, the action that they are doing. All right, so now we're going to complete the sentence with the action verb. Okay, so we're going to choose between the words. It says, Stan, his mom around the house. Do we say that Stan deep or Stan helps? We need to choose one of these two words to complete our sentence with the action verb. the correct one. It says stand, we say stand deep his mom around the house, or Stan helps his mom around the house. So if his mom is busy cleaning, cooking, doing household chores, does he deep his mom around the house or does he help his mom around the house? We need to choose the correct one. The action verb that tells us what the noun does. And if we choose the action verb that tells us what the noun does, then we can say Stan helps. I'm going to circle it. Deep does not make sense within the sentence, right? So we can basically say Stan helps his mom around the house, not deep, because deep does not make sense. And helps is the action verb that tells us what Stan does, right? Stan helps his mom around the house. Haley walked down the hall with Eric. Haley walked down the hall with Eric. Do we say that Haley walked, or do we say Haley's strong? We need to choose the correct word, right, to complete the sentence. We need to choose the correct action verb to complete the sentence. Is it walked or strong? Haley, do we say Haley walked down the hall with Eric, or Haley Strong down the hall with Eric? We need to choose the correct action verb. So if we choose the correct action verb, we can then say Haley walked down the hall, right? So not strong, because strong does not make sense within the sentence because you don't strong down the hall. We walk down the wall. So Haley walked down the wall with Eric. And that basically tells us what Haley did. So walked being our action verb. So Haley walked down the hall with Eric. So walked is our action verb that tells us what Haley did. And Haley being our noun. All right, we're going to complete the sentence with the correct action verb. Haley walked off the bus with Nina. Do we say Haley stepped off the bus with Nina, or Haley drove off the bus with Nina? We need to choose one of that words to complete the sentence. So one of that action verbs to complete the sentence. Haley walked off the bus with Nina. Did Haley step off the bus with Nina? Haley stepped off the bus with Nina, or Haley dove off the bus with Nina? We need to choose the correct action verb to complete the sentence. All right, and if we choose the correct action verb, right, then we can say stepped, right? Because before you get off the bus, we say You stepped off the bus, not door. So door is not the word. It's not a word that makes sense within the sentence. So we just say that Haley stepped off the bus with Nina. So stepped is the action verb that tells us what Haley did. Haley stepped off the bus with Nina. So that is basically the action verb, right? And the action verb, it tells us what the noun does. All right, let's go to our test. We are going to choose one of these two words to complete the sentence with the action verb. Miss Maxwell, do we say Miss Maxwell time in the children's library, or Miss Maxwell works in the children's library? So Maxwell time in the children's library, or Maxwell works in the children's library. All right, so if we choose the correct action verb, yes, then we will say works. Because if you put that word time within that sentence, you will see that time does not make sense within that one sentence. So we can say Miss Maxwell works in the children's library. So if you said works, then well done, well done. Philip basketball higher than anyone else on the team, or Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team? We need to choose the correct action verb to complete the sentence. Do we say Philip basketball higher than anyone else on the team, or Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team? We need to choose the correct action verb within that sentence. So do we say it's option 1, which is basketball, or option 2, which is jumps, in order for us to complete the sentence? All right, so if we choose the correct action verb to complete the sentence, and then we are going to say Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team, right? And basketball just does not make sense because you cannot basketball higher than anyone else on the team, right? You belong to a basketball team, right? But we don't basketball higher than anyone else. We jump higher than anyone else. For example, on the basketball team. So jumps being our action verb that tells us what Philip does. So jumps, well done. Jumps is correct. Nina prize games with her sister, or Nina played games with her sister. We need to choose the correct word to complete the sentence, or the correct action verb to complete the sentence. Nina prize games with her sister, or Nina played games with her sister. We need to choose the correct action verb in order to complete the sentence. That basically tells us what Nina does, or what Nina did. Nina prize, or Nina played. And if we choose the correct action verb, right, to complete our sentence. And then we can say Nina played games with her sister. And that will tell us what Nina did, or what Nina does. And prize just does not make sense. Nina played games with her sister. So if you had played games with the sister, then well done, good job. All right, so that is us using action verbs. Now we're going to identify action verbs. And remember, we said an action verb, it tells us what a noun does or what a noun did, right? So it tells us what the noun does or what the noun did. And we gave two examples of nouns, action verbs, sorry. We said she ate an apple. So it's like asking ourselves, what did she do? She ate. Ate. That is something that she did. Ate an apple. We smile. So we need to ask ourselves, what do we do? We smile, because smile is our action. All right, so now we are going to select the action verb. We're going to select the action verb. My sister builds toy airplanes. The action verb. So it's like asking ourselves, what does your sister do? Or what did your sister do? Or what does your sister do? So we need to choose one of the words within that sentence, that very same sentence. My sister builds toy airplanes. So what does the sister do? And if we choose the correct word that tells us what the sister does, and then we can say builds, right? Something that she's doing. She builds toy airplanes. And they are underlined builds. We need to select the action verb within the sentence. The green ball bounced down the stairs. The green ball bounced down the stairs. So, what did the green ball do? So, the green ball bounced. So, bounced being our action verb. Bounced. That is our action verb. It tells us what the green ball did. It bounced down the stairs. So bounced is our action verb. Luke runs very fast. Luke runs very fast. We need to select the action verb within that sentence that tells us what the noun does. So we need to ask ourselves, what does Luke do? So we can then say Luke runs very fast. So Luke runs very fast. So that tells us what Luke does. Runs very fast. So runs is our action verb that tells us what Luke does. All right. So now we're going to identify the action verbs, right, by going to our test. All right, so if we look at our first one, right, it says we need to select the action verb. Eva buttoned her coat. So Eva buttoned her coat. Is it buttoned or coat? We need to select the action verb. Buttoned or coat. It's the action verb that tells us what Eva did. So what did Eva do? Eva buttoned her coat. Do we say buttoned or coat? All right, so if we select the action verb and then we can say buttoned being our action verb. Buttoned. It tells us what Eva did. Eva buttoned her coat. Right, so buttoned. Nicole pets, the cat. Nicole pets the cat. So Nicole pets the cat. We need to select the action verb within that sentence that tells us what Nicole does. Do we say Nicole pets or Nicole cats? Nicole pets or Nicole cat? We need to select the action verb that tells us what Nicole does. All right. So if we are going to select the correct action verb within that sentence that tells us what Nicole does, then we will say Nicole pets the cat. So pets being correct. So well done if you have pets. Dad watered the garden. Watered the garden. We need to select the action verb. So Dad watered the garden. We need to select the action verb that tells us what Dad does. All right, so if we select the action verb within the sentence, and then we can say watered. So what does Dad do, or what did Dad do? Dad watered the garden. So watered being our action verb. So watered. Oh, well done if you have watered. We need to select the action verb. Some kinds of ants bite. Some kinds of ants bite. Do we have, is the action verb that we are using ants or bite? Ants or, bite? Ants or, bite? And if we select the action verb, we will say bite. It tells us what the ants do. So what does the ants do? They bite. So bite. And bite is correct. Our dog Penny barks at Tess. So our dog Penny barks at Tess. We need to select the action verb. So our dog barks at Tess. So what does our dog do? Our dog Penny. What does our dog Penny do? It barks, right? So our action verb is barks. My brother walked to school today. My brother walked to school today. We need to select the action verb. Is it walked or is it school? Walked or school? So we need to select the action verb. What did my brother do? My brother walked, right? My brother walked to school today. So walked being, and that is correct. Walked being correct because that is the action verb that tells us what we were doing. And Luke runs very fast. Luke runs very fast. So what does Luke do? Runs. So Luke runs very fast. So basically, we need to ask ourselves, yes, is the young boy banged his blocks together? The young boy banged his blocks together. We need to choose between banged or blocks. Banged or blocks. So we ask ourselves, what is the young boy doing? And then we can say banged. All right. That was us using the action verb. Now we're going to identify action verbs. And remember, we said an action verb, it tells us what the noun does. So we are going to, within the sentence that is given, we are going to underline the action verb. So Josh stepped over the cat. Josh stepped over the cat. So we need to ask ourselves, what did Josh do? What did Josh do? So we need to select the correct one by underlining it. And we can say stepped. Stepped over the cat. And that is what Josh did. Josh stepped over the cat. Mom worked all day. We need to select the correct action verb within that sentence. Mom worked all day. We need to select the action verb. All right, so if we select the correct word, we will say mom worked. So worked, that tells us what mom did. Worked. And Nicole pets the cat. We need to select the action verb within that sentence. Nicole pets the cat. So we ask ourselves, what does Nicole do? What tells us what Nicole does? So we can say pets. So pets the cat. So pets being the action verb that tells us what Nicole does. All right, so now we are going to identify action verbs by going to the test. We are going to select the action verb, right? Eva buttoned her coat. So Eva buttoned her coat. And if we choose the correct one, the action verb, we can say buttoned, because that is the action verb that tells us what Eva does. All right, so buttoned is correct. Nicole pets the cats. Nicole pets the cat. Is it pets or cat? We need to select the correct action verb. Pets or cat. So it must tell us what Nicole does. So pets tells us what Nicole does. All right. And then dad watered the garden. Dad watered the garden. Do we say watered or garden? Watered or garden. We need to select the action verb that tells us what dad did. So dad watered the garden. So our action verbs, if we choose our action verbs, is it watered or garden? So we can say dad watered the garden. And watered tells us what dad does. Watered the garden. All right. And then some kinds of ants bite. Some kinds of ants bite. We need to select the action verb. So is it ants or bite? Some kinds of ants bite. So we need to select the action verb. It tells us what the ants do. All right, so if we select the action verb, then we can say bite. So some kinds of animals bite. So bite being our action verb. Bite. All right. All right, so now if we look at these examples, right, we need to create sentences, right, that shows the action verb that tells us what the noun does. Runs, brush, skip, eat, read, and kick. We need to use one of these words and then we need to create a sentence. Make a sentence with the action verb, one of these action verbs. And it also needs to tell us what the noun does, which means that there needs to be a noun. And if we choose the first one and make a sentence, right? Then we can say, I run the marathon or I run the race, right? So, which means that run is the action verb that was used. I run the marathon or ran a marathon. The next one we can maybe say Sarah all right. So brush. We can even say Sarah brush her teeth. Oopsie. Brush her teeth daily. So Sarah brush her teeth daily. We need to select, and if we select our action verb that tells us what Sarah does, and then we use brush, right? And that is but two simple sentences that we made of the examples that we see over there, like which is skip, eat, read, kick, brush, and run that we used already. All right, so grade twos, that is now the end of our lesson on action verbs, right? And we use the action verbs as well as identified the action verbs. And we said an action verb, it tells us what the noun does. So thank you very much for joining the class. Thank you for being interactive and answering questions. You should have a good day further. Goodbye.